For centuries, one institution has quietly moved more money than most nations, and it answers to no one on earth. Hidden beneath layers of sanctity and ceremony lies one of history's most sophisticated financial machines, the Vatican. To most, the Vatican is a place of prayer, a sanctuary for the soul. But behind those marble walls is something very different, a sovereign state the size of a neighborhood, with its own bank, its own currency, and its own laws. It is both church and country, both moral compass and global corporation. The story of how faith became finance begins long before the age of central banks. In the Middle Ages, salvation itself was a transaction. The church controlled not only the gates of heaven, but the flow of money on earth. Peasants paid tithes to cleanse their souls. Kings borrowed gold to fund crusades, and every coin that passed through Christian Europe eventually found its way to Rome. The turning point came in the 14th century, when the church discovered the most profitable business of all, sin itself. Through indulgences, the faithful could literally buy forgiveness. A payment could shorten your time in purgatory, or someone else's. The more you gave, the faster your soul ascended. It was divine capitalism, centuries before Wall Street existed. This trade in salvation flooded Rome with gold. But gold is power, and power attracts corruption. By the early 1500s, indulgences had become a continental industry. Agents crisscrossed Europe selling spiritual futures, certificates of redemption issued by the church itself. The prophets financed cathedrals, armies, and influence. And while the faithful saw it as devotion, reformers like Martin Luther saw it as extortion. The moment the sacred became financialized, the scandal fractured Christendom, but it didn't stop the flow of money. If anything, it forced the Vatican to evolve. Rome learned to hide its wealth, not flaunt it. Instead of storing gold openly, it began to weave a web of financial relationships across Europe. By the 17th century, the church had quietly become one of the largest landowners and lenders on the continent. Monasteries acted as vaults. Bishops became bankers. Faith provided trust, the one currency that never devalued. But the true foundation of the Vatican's modern wealth was built in the 19th and early 20th centuries, when political empires fell and financial empires rose. In 1870, the Papal States, once a vast territorial domain, were absorbed by the new Kingdom of Italy. On paper, the Vatican had lost everything. In reality, it was about to gain more than ever. The Pope's lands were gone, but Italy owed him a lot. Decades later, in 1929, under the Lateran Treaty, Mussolini's government compensated the church with 1.75 billion lire, roughly $100 million in gold and bonds at the time. That settlement became the seed capital for what would quietly grow into the Vatican's global investment empire. With that money, the Vatican created a holding company known as the Administration of the Patrimony of the Holy See, or APSA. Its purpose: manage the church's assets like a sovereign wealth fund. Land, bonds, real estate, all under the guidance of clerics in cassocks who spoke more Latin than balance sheets, but soon learned both fluently. To outsiders, it was divine restoration. To insiders, it was the creation of one of the world's most secretive portfolios. Over the decades, APSA quietly bought stakes in multinational corporations, from energy firms to insurance companies, often through offshore structures designed to keep ownership invisible. Few realized that the Vatican had become a silent shareholder in the machinery of global capitalism, but the real power came in 1942, when the Vatican founded something new: the Institute for Works of Religion. Its name sounded holy, its function was anything but. This was the Vatican Bank. Officially, it existed to serve religious orders and charities. Unofficially, it became the perfect instrument for discrete transactions, shielded by Vatican sovereignty, exempt from foreign oversight, and protected by divine reputation. No other financial institution on earth operated with such immunity. During the Cold War, the Vatican Bank became a geopolitical conduit. Funds were funneled to support anti-communist movements across Europe, often through intermediaries in Italy, Spain, and Latin America. In return, Western intelligence agencies looked the other way. It was an unholy alliance: capitalism, Catholicism, and covert operations, all wrapped in moral justification. But secrecy breeds scandal, and by the 1970s, cracks began to show. A web of corruption surfaced, linking the Vatican Bank to Italy's most notorious financial and political crises. The central figure was Michele Sindona, a Sicilian banker and close Vatican advisor. Through a labyrinth of offshore accounts, Sindona laundered mafia money, financed political bribes, and manipulated currency markets, all under the church's protection. When his empire collapsed, so did the illusion of purity. Then came Roberto Calvi, known as God's banker. As head of Banco Ambrosiano, Calvi managed hundreds of millions in Vatican-linked funds. But in 1982, his body was found hanging beneath London's Blackfriars Bridge, his pockets filled with bricks. Officially suicide. Unofficially, a warning. The investigation exposed a vortex of fraud, shell companies, and secret Vatican accounts stretching from Luxembourg to Panama. For the first time, the world saw the Vatican's financial veil lift, and what lay beneath wasn't holiness. It was power, yet even scandal couldn't topple the system. The Vatican Bank paid restitution, fired officials, and promised reform. But its core privileges remained untouched. Sovereignty meant secrecy. No external authority, not Italy, not Europe, not the IMF, could demand a full audit. The Church had, in effect, built a parallel financial world, one accountable only to itself. But money, like faith, evolves. As the 21st century unfolded, the Vatican faced new challenges: transparency laws, digital banking, and mounting pressure from global watchdogs. The old methods, anonymous accounts, handwritten ledgers, discreet transfers, no longer worked in a world of blockchain and sanctions lists. So, the Vatican adapted again. It restructured its bank, closed thousands of dormant accounts, and submitted, partially, to international oversight. Yet, investigators still found irregularities: funds routed through charities to buy luxury real estate in London, secret commissions, and investments that clashed with Catholic ethics. Each scandal was treated as an anomaly. But the pattern remained, because the Vatican's wealth isn't just financial, it's structural. Every cathedral, every parcel of prime land, every piece of Renaissance art holds value beyond measure. The Church owns more real estate than any other entity on earth. In cities like Paris, Madrid, and Buenos Aires, its properties anchor the old centers of power. Even the museums of the Vatican, filled with priceless art, generate hundreds of millions each year, a perpetual treasury masked as cultural heritage. Yet the Vatican insists its wealth serves a moral mission. Hospitals, orphanages, schools, institutions that heal and teach in every corner of the globe. And to a degree, it's true. But every act of charity also reinforces influence. Every donation strengthens dependency. Money, when baptized in faith, becomes more than currency. It becomes control. To understand the Vatican's financial mastery, you must see it as a system of belief-backed capital. Where other empires collapsed when their coins lost trust, the Church's currency, faith, never devalued. For 2 millennia, it has monetized belief. It turns guilt into gold, devotion into endowment, and fear into forever revenue. Today, the Vatican's total net worth is unknown. Estimates range from tens to hundreds of billions, spread across investments, property, and priceless artifacts. But what matters isn't the number. It's the architecture of invisibility. Because wealth that can't be measured can't be taxed, and wealth that can't be seen can't be challenged. In many ways, the Vatican pioneered the offshore model before the term existed. A microstate with diplomatic immunity, its bank functions like a sovereign tax haven, yet wrapped in holiness. The Cayman Islands have beaches. The Vatican has basilicas. Both promise discretion, one for sin, the other for salvation. And while other institutions fall under political scrutiny, the Vatican endures because its legitimacy isn't built on law, it's built on belief. Governments rise and fall, markets boom and crash. But the Church's brand, divine authority, is eternal. That's what allows it to survive every financial crisis, every scandal, every revelation. Faith, after all, is the most stable currency of all. The irony is profound. The institution that preached poverty, perfected profit. The same entity that condemned usury became the ultimate lender. In the name of God, it built one of the most resilient financial systems ever known, decentralized before Bitcoin, borderless before globalization, and untouchable before regulation. Today, as central banks print trillions and digital currencies challenge the dollar, the Vatican watches quietly, just as it always has, because it's seen it all before. Empires rise on gold, fall on paper, and reinvent themselves in code. But power, real power, is never in the money itself. It's in who defines its meaning. And for centuries, that definition has echoed through marble halls and whispered Latin prayers. Not from Wall Street, not from London, but from a city of less than 1,000 souls, where faith became finance and God became a banker.